Cheers, everyone. Welcome to the new Poppy List. I am Dave Brown. We have some interesting pictures coming out of Russia after the announcement of this partial mobilization. Now, what we're seeing is people trying to flee the countries. Allegedly, there's a backup of cars trying to go into Finland. Airline prices skyrocketing as people try to buy tickets out of the country. And the general picture presented by the Western media is one of unrest and discontent within Russia. Now, is this true? Well, first off, we all know that the Western media has a very obvious and clear bias. So sitting in the West, it's impossible for us to say with certainty what is going on internally within Russia. Now, there are some social media accounts from people living in Russia that can give us a clue, but we can't say for sure. But I want to make a point, and that is, irrespective of the country or the conflict, anytime you have a mobilization, a draft, you are going to get some pushback from the general population. Even if a war is considered to be a just war, that will happen. Now, within the United States, we have had several wars, and even wars that we look back upon as being wars that needed to be fought. At the time, there were people who were very unhappy with it. Now, during the Civil War, after the Battle of Gettysburg, there was a manpower shortage within the Union Army, and there was federal legislation drafted to draft people into the Army so that they could finish this war. That was very unpopular. There were riots. The riots were so bad in New York City, the Army was sent in to quell these riots, and there were hundreds of people killed. So this civil war that we look upon as being a war that needed to be fought, back then, at that time, there were a large segment of the population who did not want to go into battle. And if you look at the brutality of that war, you can't blame them. Even in World War II, there were some people who avoided the draft. In 1943, the FBI actually had a nationwide operation to find people who were avoiding the draft. And of course, our best example of people avoiding service is the Vietnam War. There were upwards of 500,000 people who tried to avoid the draft. Famously, Bill Clinton went to Canada in order to avoid service in Vietnam. And there were others as well, getting medical exemptions. People with money obviously had more opportunity to try to avoid this draft. But it was very unpopular. And in 1977, Jimmy Carter granted a general amnesty for anybody who avoided the Vietnam War. So within the United States, we can look at any unrest in Russia and go, ha ha, look at Russia. They're not happy with their government. But we can look back at our own country and see the very exact same thing happening in our past conflicts. And in our most recent conflict, we did not have a draft, but in the second half of the Bush administration, between 2006 and 2008, the media was very anti-war. They amplified everyone on the left who was protesting the war. You had Sidney Sheehan in front of the White House. I think it was called Code Pink. So it is normal for society, irrespective of the war, irrespective of the country, to have a certain level of unrest. And this war in Ukraine is a brutal war. We've seen, I think now, up to 100,000 dead on both sides combined. This conventional war is fought with artillery. It's not one of these wars we've seen the U.S. fight in Afghanistan or Iraq, where we have complete superiority. It is absolutely brutal. And people who have gone to the front lines will say, you can't outrun artillery. It is, you get in your foxhole and you pray that the shell misses you. And so you can't blame people in Russia, even people who are supportive of the general effort. You can't blame them for not wanting to go to the front lines. But that being said, most Russians who were conscripted are probably lining up and going. We often, again, in the West, we look at things through our Western eyes. We think that people, even in Russia, are look at this conflict through our eyes, and they don't. They're patriots. They care about their country. And wrong or right, irrespective of what we feel or we think from the West, Russians love their country, and they have their own rationalizations and reasons for going to war with Ukraine. And in general, they're participating, they're cooperating with their government. Now, as far as the war itself, is this going to change anything? It will. I've talked about this escalation, the slow escalation over time as Russia is more committed, and then NATO responds by more weapons and more sanctions. And we will see over the next 4 months into the winter just how committed Russia is to winning this war. And based on how far they've come, I don't think they can turn back. And the response from NATO is what could be dangerous. This could escalate out of control. And who knows, maybe we have a nuclear confrontation at some point. Hopefully that does not happen, but we'll have to see. Well, that's it for now. Again, if you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.